All right, y'all, we're out here today on this would be a friend of mine's farm, and it used to be his granddaddy's place. And his granddaddy was the well driller here in town for years and years. I don't know how long, or what year it was that he retired or whatever, but anyway, there's an old well drilling rig, a Bucyrus Armstrong cable tool rig out here in the woods, and we're going to work our way towards that and try to drag that thing out of here today. You can see all the fence posts here are old metal well casing, 4-inch well casing. I went ahead and walked on out here to it and kind of flagged a trail for coming in with the machine, and figured I'd get y'all a little video of it before we get it dug out of here. Now, like I said, I don't know how long this thing's been here, and I know it's missing some parts. The man that had it, I think this was just a parts machine. I think he had another rig that he actually used that they sold a long time ago, and then this one was just left out here in the woods. Although this was probably just the corner of his pasture whenever this thing was put out here. You can see the spud sticking up there, and the covers for it were laying off over here, and that whole batch of dirt was laying in the cover. I got them out the other day when I came down here and looked at it and drug them over here, but they've been laying on the ground full of dirt for probably 40 years or better. Probably longer than that. I'd bet this thing's been here since the 60s at least. And it, the cover ain't rusted out, neither one of them. I guess that had like a fiber disc on it or something for a pulley. Well, I'm gonna squirt a couple of things down with some Gibbs oil here. Now, Gibbs oil doesn't sponsor our channel here, but I promise you, the Georgia Cat Skinner sponsors Gibbs oil. It's hard to film with one hand and work with the other. I'm gonna probably try to get the mast off of it here, and I don't think that pin is real tight fitting, but I'm gonna go ahead and give it a squirt of juice anyway. And then come in here, get the machine in here where I can push on some of these trees and move them out of the way and this, that, and the other. So we'll be back. All right, we got it cut out of the trees. There was a couple of pretty good sized saplings growing up in it. This one, I hope I've got it cut good enough when we go to move it, it'll just come and not break that pulley there. We're gonna be real careful with it though. I have no idea how much this thing weighs, and I don't know if my machine can pick it up or not. I am gonna undo the mast off of it first, and then we'll set it on, undo the mast and get it out of here, and then probably make an attempt at just picking the whole works up. And I don't know if I can do it or not, but we'll see. And this right here is why we use Gibbs oil. That's like a 5/8 or so bolt nut that really shouldn't have any threads at all left in it, or we should have broke the bolt, or this nut should have broke into pieces or whatever. But it, we soaked it down with some Gibbs oil and come back in a little while and took it right off without much problem. All right, I don't know how much this thing weighs, but we're just gonna see if we can pick up one end of it a little bit. Well, she's out of the woods, but it's gonna have to go in pieces before I can ever get it on a trailer. It's got, I can barely pick up one end of it with the excavator. I don't know what it weighs, but it was all the machine wanted to do to drag it, and so I'm gonna see if I can get the mast off of it, and or the spar or the spud or whatever your chosen name for the tower is, and then the sputter, I'll get that off, and maybe the engine, and at that point hopefully I'll just be able to pick it up and set it on the trailer. All right, everybody, we got the old Bucyrus Armstrong drilling rig back to the house here, and a friend of mine helped me out a lot, and we were actually able to get it on the trailer intact. And we figured out the thing probably weighs about 5,000 pounds or so, like it sets. So what I have found out about it so far is it is a 1930s, I think it's probably a 33 was what we came up with, but it is a early 30s Bucyrus Armstrong 33W. What little bit of information we can find on it is there was only about 245 of these made, for the whole model year, but they are really, really similar to other friction drive cable tool rigs. I found this cover whenever I first went out and looked at the machine. Y'all saw that already. I found those covers with the excavator and didn't mean to. So we'll have to heat them up. Well, there's one that didn't get messed up, but the other two got crunched pretty good, so we'll have to heat them up and straighten them out or make some new ones. I'm not real sure yet exactly what we're going to do, but it's missing most of the support poles for the tower, but those are easy enough to make. I thought that this machine was missing a bunch of parts, but it's really not. Most everything is here, so we're actually going to try getting it going, and it may end up on that truck. The engine is an old Leroy 4-cylinder, and if there's anybody out there that knows anything about Leroy engines and has any notion about what model this is, let me know. This was laying out with it, and I actually think this is a bit gauge for the cable tool bits, because I saw a homemade one, because I've seen some stuff in old catalogs that they called a bit gauge that looked similar to that. It may just be a piece of junk, but they made it for something, and that was my guess as to what it was. The flat belt wheel that was here was probably a paper pulley, it looks like, and most of it's gone. So we'll have to find a pulley for that if we can ever get that old Leroy engine running. It's it's pretty sad. Alright, the main flywheel right here on the end of the jack shaft, as far as I can tell, is the only thing that this is actually missing. Most all of the other parts are here. In fact, I haven't found anything that it's actually missing that there's a lot of stuff that's been unbolted, but I've found all of it so far. And not everything is completely froze up like I thought it would be too. There's once you pull the lever for the bull wheel here, it'll actually turn. The jack shaft, that clutch is probably completely stuck right there. There's a lot of stuff that's stuck on it, but I'm going to take it apart piece by piece, and I'll try to film a lot of that. We'll see if we can make a series out of it, and see if we can get this old girl put back together. I did also find one of the original screw jacks that they used to hold the back of the truck up to level it and everything, or to support it. So when you pull that, that pulls the bull wheel forward, and the brake shoe here on both sides is stationary. It doesn't move, and that pulls the wheel forward, so it'll actually turn. Barely. So the way this actually works, the engine there doesn't have a PTO that you can take in or out of gear. It just drives all the time. That's the tension pulley. There would have been a big flat belt pulley on this shaft. That's called the jack shaft. You'd crank the engine. It was a hand crank engine. It didn't have a starter on it. When you'd crank the engine, it would just be turning this shaft all the time. And this gear is attached to this clutch, and the shaft turns inside the gear until this clutch is engaged. So on the other side here, you have the jack shaft and this gear here, this clutch. All the controls are at the back of the machine. This is a fiber, well, a bunch of fiber discs that are, it's a friction drive machine. So when you pull on that lever that I showed you, it pulls this wheel into the fiber discs here, or the friction discs here, and it starts this turning. And that's how you run the cable in or out. You know, that's how you trip your cable in and out of the hole. Then on the end of the shaft, there's another, all the friction discs are gone, but there's another friction drive here that goes up against this wheel, or this wheel gets pulled back against it, and that runs what's called the sand line, which was the little winch drum that the baling bucket goes on, because once you've driven the bit so deep, you have to pull it out and run a baling bucket down the hole to get the cuttings out. And then that was the brake shoe that was mounted right here. They had took it loose at some point. So I've got to cut all the wood and everything off of it. Go ahead, I actually finally, this was stuck a lot worse than I thought it was, but I finally got it to move with an old spike hammer. A few good swings got it to pop loose. So I've got to take that out. There's the rest of the mast laying over there. I've got to take the rest of the tower off of it, and then we're just going to start taking it apart piece by piece and sandblast everything and start putting it back together. I've got to figure out how to make those friction drive discs, and I have no idea really what they are actually made out of. It's probably something that you don't want to mess with, but we'll figure out something we can use for them, because there's no way that something like that is just going to be available off the shelf somewhere. This was the inside piece of the tower, or the very top of it. This is the pulley for the sand line, and then of course you've got the main pulley here for the drilling line. So just to show you all the controls here, this is for the main bull gear, or for the main bull winch that's got your main drill line on it, the drill string. This is engages and disengages the clutch for the spudder. And then this lever here is what operates your sand line. And then this was a throttle. They had the spudder arm disconnected, and I actually luckily found the pin for it laying on the ground, and I'm going to go back this winter after everything dies off and maybe even take a metal detector and swing through all the ivy and everything over there and see if there's any other parts that are laying there. Mostly I'm hoping I can find that big flywheel that goes on the end of the jack shaft, but I don't. That was probably the only part that they ever robbed off of this machine, because it looks like everything else is here. So apparently this machine was, the tower has to be hand cranked up. So that's what this old crank here is for. Once the tower got raised up this way, then it started, the inside piece started rising like a extension ladder would. There's what's left of the cable that actually raised the tower up and pulled it up. And somewhere on, I guess it's that end down there, there's this little latch that, I think this is what was supposed to keep it from sliding out while you were going down the road. Like if you hit the brakes too hard or something. And then of course, all these are steps, because once it's stood up, you've got to climb up the tower to hook up the braces here. And then this is kind of interesting. This is a repair that they did at some point in time. This is what you flip down to keep the tower from falling back down if something happened. And this is an old railroad tie plate. The place where this was at was like 20 feet from a railroad track. And I guess at some point he needed a piece of steel and just found an old tie plate laying on the track there, or laying by the track. So that's kind of a neat add-on that the original guy that owned this did. So I'm gonna leave that on there. That's pretty cool. I don't know what caused this heavy plate here to get those holes rusted in it, unless there was a muffler there at one time, or the exhaust was just blowing on it right there. I really don't know, but something did eat that all up. So we're gonna cut all this out and make a new plate here and weld that in, and we'll do all that after it's all stripped down and in the process of getting sandblasted and everything. So I'm not sure if that engine will ever run again. We're gonna take it apart and see what it looks like though. If not, I'll have to find some sort of a little, maybe a international Cub power unit or something like that to run it. I'll have to find a new pulley for the flat belt and a new pulley for the jack shaft. Now, any of you other guys out there that have actually run one of these things, supposedly the main flywheel for the jack shaft it measures out to be the same as is on like a Bucyrus Erie 22W or one of those size machines. So that shouldn't be hard to find a wheel to go right there. It's actually going to be pretty close to the same size as this wheel for the sand line. In fact, it might be that exact size. I just have to, somebody sent me some measurements on, because oddly enough, since there's only been like 250 of these made, there's a couple of videos of this exact style machine running, this exact model, on YouTube. And I've talked to the folks that actually own those machines, and they were good enough to give me some measurements on that size flywheel there. So hopefully we can find one of those on another old junk machine or something like that. I really hate to get into having to cast one, because that would cost a tremendous amount of money, most likely. Alright, y'all, well, that's it for this one. This is one of our wintertime projects we're going to start fooling with, and we'll start getting some video of taking it apart and working on it. Hopefully we can get it back running one day. Before I do too much to it, I'm going to see if I can source a flywheel for that jack shaft, but you know, I'm not going to let that one part keep me from getting this thing put back together and operational again. If I have to cobble something together, we will, but I bet I can find something that'll work. So y'all check back, like and subscribe, and share these videos, and we'll see y'all on the next one.